Good evening, class. We're going to get started on chapter 5 in the text, and it's where they start to talk about business level strategies. But before we get into the business level strategies, let's go back and quickly go through what we learned in chapter 4, because again, a lot of these chapters build on each other as you go through the text. Spent a lot of time in chapter 4 talking about resource-based theory. That's where they talked about um, valuable, talked about rare, talk about difficult to imitate, non-substitutable. And again, you're talking about strategic resources, not so much, cars and, machines and things, but more the strategic resources that executives build within the company. And at least in theory, that helps them build that competitive advantage. And there are basically two resource types. There's tangible and there's intangible. And once we walk through the tangible and intangible resource types, then they start talking about capabilities versus resources. And basically the authors talked about a lot of companies have the resources or maybe have what should be their strategic resources, but they don't have the capabilities to act on them, or they don't have the capabilities to execute them. And so it makes things difficult. And it's that combination of having the strategic resources and also having the capability to execute those strategic resources and build it into your organization. That's what drives competitive nature of these organizations. And then they talked about the marketing mix. And I make, a joke that the text does actually a pretty good job with little acronyms and little, snippets or phrases to try to help individuals understand what they're talking about and to some extent help them remember what they're talking about. So again, the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, promotion. And we talked about that in chapter 4 as those are the drivers. And it depends on the economy and depends on where the market is located that you're trying to function in, and especially in the industry you're trying to function in, which of those is the most important. And as an economist, I'm always looking at price. To me, price is a huge driver, and it drives especially the decision-making process of the majority of the individuals, especially in the economy that we're trying to struggle with now. And then the authors moved into when they were talking about rare and valuable and non-substitutable and difficult to imitate. Then they got into intellectual properties, and you've got patents, you've got trademarks, and again, trademarks. If a product has a trademark, look for that capital R with the circle around it. Talked about copyrights, and if it's copywritten or it has a copyright, it's again capital C, and you've got the circle around it. And then we talked about trade secrets and driving those 4 types of intellectual properties. That's where you drive into the valuable, the rare, non-substitutable. And again, there's where you're going to, and you can throw difficult to imitate in there, but for the majority of these, whether it's patent, trademark, copyright, or trade secrets, they're difficult to imitate because a lot of them are either very closely held when it comes to trade secrets, or copyrights, trademarks, and patents, they are covered by law. So unless you're in some of those countries that are doing it illegally, especially in the Orient, they're protected here in the United States, especially from imitation. And these are strategic resources that a lot of companies build their competitive advantage on. And then we spent some time with the authors talking about elements of value chain. And there's 2 types of activities in value chain. There's a primary, and then you've got your secondary. And the primary, portions of the value chain, you've got inbound logistics, you've got operations, you've got marketing and sales, you've got outbound logistics, and you've got service. And I know we were just trying to finish it up, still working on it, but our refrigerator freezer went out on us probably 2 years ago. in August, I guess. And when we ordered the refrigerator, it was right in the middle of COVID. I mean, it was a mess trying to get parts and service in. And the refrigerator we needed to fit a specific, I guess I'll call it a hole or cabinet in the kitchen had to have a specific uh, brand, had to have a specific size. And when we ordered it in August of that year, they said it was going to be at least a year before we'd have the refrigerator. So luckily we had a secondary refrigerator downstairs, so it didn't impact us that much. But not only did it take us a year, it almost took us a year and 3 months to get that refrigerator in. And that's where they're talking about inbound logistics, they're talking about operations, not so much marketing and sales, but especially those inbound logistics. And I think that's where a lot of your legislators, or especially a lot of your policymakers, would like to see the United States go back to a more independent manufacturer of goods and services. Because, especially during COVID, think of all the cargo container ships that were just anchored there in the LA ports, and you couldn't get the stuff offloaded at the docks. And then you had trouble getting truckers and transportation to get those goods and services shipped into especially the Midwest, and to even a greater extent into the East Coast. So again, primary activities, that's what they're talking about, trying to build that value chain and ensuring that of those 5 primary activities that they talk about in the book, that you're able to efficiently manage each of those 5 primary activities. And then the secondary activities, you're probably not too surprised with. You've got the company infrastructure, how it's built, how it's managed, what are the IT technology, the phone lines, all of that infrastructure. You've got HR, which HR is, in most companies, they're kind of the driving force. They hire people, they interview people, they watch for Title VII issues, Title IX issues, making sure everybody's playing in the sandbox like they should. You've got technological development. So what kind of technology is driving your organization that you look for? And then again, procurement. And procurement, some companies sell that short, but depending on the company you work for and depending on the industry you're in, procurement can be a huge driver, again, in what? A huge driver in the profit function. Revenues minus cost equals your profit. And if I think about healthcare, especially if I'm working for a health plan, so I'm working on the payer side of the house, one of the biggest costs on the payer side of the house is just the actual cost of the healthcare goods and services that the health plan has to pay for. So the health plan is sitting here with 500,000 or 600,000 lives, 1 million lives. If you're United, you may have, I don't know what United's membership is now. It's probably, probably getting close to maybe 100,000, getting close to 1 million people. I don't really know, or maybe even more than that. Maybe it's getting closer to, 75, 80 million, 75, 80 million people. I don't really know what their membership is, but at the same time, that is a huge cost. The outlay is a huge cost. And what drives that outlay? The outlay is driven by the number of goods and services that their covered population consumes. When I say goods and services, I'm talking about healthcare. And maybe more importantly is not only the quantity side of that equation, but it's the price side of that equation. How good of a job does United or Aetna or any health plan do when it comes to negotiating the rates with the provider community for the goods and services that their membership are going to consume, in a year's time? Lastly, they spent a few minutes talking about best supply chain management. It's a strategic, supply chain management where you've got the speed time cycle, you've got quality, you've got cost, you've got flexibility. Those are all kind of measures of the supply chain manager, the strategic supply chain management. And then on top of that, you've got agility and adaptability and alignment. And those rolled up together, authors have allocated those to the best supply chain management. And then lastly, you've got SWOT. strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And I don't know how many times in a multitude of organizations that I've been involved in that you've gone through these SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis, from my perspective, and I agree with the authors, one of the best things about SWOT analysis, it teaches people to be creative and to think outside the box and to throw a lot of ideas out there, and some of them actually stick and some of them actually work out really well. So never put a lot of emphasis on the results of the SWOT analysis as much as the activity that you go through or the processes you go through from the start of the SWOT analysis to you actually have written the report and outlined everything that goes into the report, because there's a lot of give and take in the thought process that goes into developing those SWOT analysis. And with that, we're going to wrap up chapter 4. We're going to start on chapter 5. And chapter 5, the authors start talking about business level strategies. And when it comes to understanding business level strategies, they like to talk about doing it through generic strategies. And a generic strategy basically says, or at least the authors phrase it this way: how will the company compete in a particular industry or in a particular market? A generic strategy is a general way of positioning a company's business level strategy within an industry, and it's the ability to create on core elements. And the authors point out, to me, a very salient concept in the text, and they say, don't get distracted by the nuances of your competitors. When I worked at Blue Cross Blue Shield, it was in the Buffalo market, and we had some of the national players in the Buffalo market, but it was really Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York. There were a couple of small regional plans, and then there was some unbranded blues business. Straight in New York is a little weird. They've got 3 blues plans as opposed to consolidating the state into one. So we had Blue Cross Blue Shield Western New York. You had Excellus that worked out of kind of the Rochester, Syracuse area, and then you had down kind of in the southeastern block of the state, you had Anthem, which was the third Blue Cross plan. And so each of these Blue Cross plans, while they had areas where they sold the brand, you could also sell unbranded products in other areas. We had some unbranded products in that Hudson River Valley in the Albany area. Excellus had some unbranded product that they sold in Buffalo market. So that was a competition. And fortunately, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York had about 45% of the book of business in the Buffalo area, in the Buffalo metropolitan area, 7 or 8 counties around Buffalo. And I don't want to say we didn't pay attention to the competition, but we pretty much developed our business level strategies based on the fact that we thought we had a better handle on the market than our competition did. And then when they're talking about business level strategies, now we get back to our buddy Michael Porter. Again, we talked about him in, I guess it was the 5 factors, but it was in one of the earlier chapters, maybe chapter 2 or chapter 3, I don't remember which one, Harvard Business School. And he's, talks about 4 generic business level strategies. And basically, he talks about the company's source of competitive advantage. It's keeping costs down or offering a unique product. And so he's developed it in kind of a little 2x2 box, and they do a pretty good job of outlining that 2x2 box. And if you go to page, I think it's 151 in the text, they've got a little 2x2 drawn, and it goes through and it talks about these types of business level strategies that Porter has developed and he's rolled out there. And a lot of companies use this analysis when they're developing these business level strategies. So secondarily, not only to the competitive advantage that Porter talks about and keeping costs down, you're looking at a company's source of scope of operations. You can either target companies in general, or you seek to attract a specific segment of a business, of a market, or a specific segment of customers. And so Porter rolls out his four generic business level strategies. He's got cost leadership, he's got differentiation, he's got focus cost leadership, and he's got focus differentiation. So you see that goes back to where you're talking about it. You're talking about where Porter talked about cost. You've got cost leadership or focus cost leadership. And he talks about scope of operation. He talks about either a narrow market or a wider market. And that's where we're going to get into the differentiation. And it's really rare, at least according to the text, for companies can offer low cost and differentiation. It is definitely a best cost strategy if, and it's a big if a company can manage to work both sides of that equation. Companies can offer neither of what they call stuck in the middle. And we'll get into that a little later in the text. And so again, if you go to page 151 in the text and look at the scope of operations, again, these Porter's drawn out the 2 by 2. Across the top, you've got cost and uniqueness, and down I'll call it the horizontal, let's say the horizontal across here, cost and uniqueness, and down the vertical, he's got a broad target or a narrow target. And when he looks at, cost on a broad target, he's talking about cost leadership. And he mentions Walmart. When it comes to low cost, acceptable quality, probably acceptable service, acceptable inventory for the most part, I agree with him. Walmart's probably your leader. I shop at Walmart. I enjoy shopping at Walmart. Fortunately, I've never made the internet. You can go out there, and I can't remember that I wrote it down in here somewhere. I think if you go in and Google people of Walmart, it'll take you to an internet site, and you can kind of get, if you've never been in a Walmart, you can kind of get an idea of some of the people that shop at Walmart. Again, fortunately, I've never made that, but and it's not something I really aspire to. And if you go out to that website and start looking at pictures, you can understand. And so that's the broad target on cost. If you look at the broad target concept when it comes to uniqueness or differentiation, they talk about Nordstrom. Nordstrom has built a business based on customer service. They built a business based on the focus on customer service, selling to a wide market of people, higher end cosmetics, clothing items. If you've never been in a Nordstrom, it's a pretty decent department store. We lived in Southern California for 20 some years, and my wife and I both shopped at Nordstrom, and the thing we both liked about it, Nordstrom kind of like Costco. You could buy something at Nordstrom, and if it didn't fit, I had a pair of shoes worn for, I don't know, a couple of months, and the soles came off. I took them back to Nordstrom, took them back, no questions asked. Didn't ask me how it happened, nothing. That was their customer service model. Got clothes home that didn't fit, took them back. There was never any questions asked. Same thing with Costco. You buy something with Costco and it doesn't fit, it tears up on you, it's defective. If you get a food item that you get home and it's either spoiled or doesn't taste good, take it back. No questions asked. Sometimes they will ask you, do you pay cash or credit? And if you pay credit, which I think most people do anymore, they can get in the system and they can tell exactly which store you bought the item from and when you purchased and all that. But again, no questions asked. Now, when they come to a narrow target market, and you're talking about, there's where you're talking about when you've got cost in a narrow market. Now you're talking about focus cost leadership, and they throw out the name Dollar General. You've heard the commercial Dollar General store, and it is it's a focus cost leadership. It focuses on a much narrower group of consumers. Walmart, hey, we're going to hit them all. Walmart's got clothing items. They've got, a huge especially if you go to, now you have to go to a superstore. They've got a lot of food products. They've got a pharmacy. They've got, and they're pretty reasonable prices. You go to Dollar General, it is really focused. It's really focused on cost, and it focuses on a narrow group of people. A few snacks and things, a few laundry detergents, some just different stuff. But again, they're buying in volume and they're trying to sell low cost. If you're looking at uniqueness in a narrow market, and it's called focused differentiation, I don't shop at malls much anymore. It's just too much of a hassle. But I guess there's a store called Anthropologie. Evidently, it's a store that caters to kind of high-end, maybe clothing items, maybe home improvement items, something. But that's the example that the authors use for kind of this focused differentiation. And the underlying generic strategies have differences. If you have a value proposition to customers, that may be one. You've got marketing efforts. You've got will lead to surprise performance if followed. So as a company, the key is if you do this type of analysis, the key for the organization is to try to determine, based on their strategic business plan, which of these four sectors do they want to be in? Do they want to be cost leadership, differentiation? Do they want to be focused cost? Do they want to be focused differentiation? It's a matter of determining which one of those markets you fall in. And if the executives make the decision and they adhere to the strategy of being in one of those four quadrants, it can actually lead to superior performance. It's just a lot of, I guess there's more executives out there than you might think that have a really difficult time trying to figure out which of those four quadrants that they fall in. There are limitations to generic strategies, and some level of tweaking may be required. So there's a lot of department stores out there, needless markup, or Neiman Marcus, but you've got Macy's, you've got, Bloomingdale's, you've got, and I can't think of any others because I don't go to the mall that often, but a lot of them have tried to follow that Nordstrom strategy, and they just haven't been successful. You have a lot of companies out there that are trying to follow Walmart, and they're struggling to do that. You've got what they call the big box stores like Costco, and Costco does an exceptional job. And I've noticed, you've got Costco, you've got BJ's, you've got Sam's Club, and Sam's Club, BJ's is higher, to me, is higher priced than Costco. But Sam's Club, I've noticed over the last couple of years, they're improving their game. They are coming on strong. They're priced wise a little less than Costco for the items that are comparable in the two stores. But they've actually improved their game, and I think they're tweaking these strategies, trying to improve and to get into those type situations. When you're talking about Dollar General, Aldi comes to mind, Lidl comes to mind, two European type stores. Aldi is the two German brothers, and one German brother, they decided to split, and one German brother took Trader Joe's, and the other German brother took Aldi's. And if you ever go into an Aldi's, which I shop at Aldi's a lot here in Atlanta, then there are Aldi's there in Nashville in that market area. But if you shop at Aldi's, you'll notice if you've ever gone to Trader Joe's and then go to Aldi's, you'll see that a lot of the products, to me, they're comparable quality wise. And if you look at the way they're marketed, they're actually, you'll notice some similarities between the two, even though the two brothers are split off. And before we get into detail, when we're talking about Porter's four quadrants or his four aspects of generic business level strategies, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll come back. Talk to everybody in a few minutes.